Hey all, here is a replay version of the most recent live stream Q&A on all things Social Security that occurs every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is with all of little silences carved out of it. So I hope it's an easier listen for those who are doing the replay versus being there live. And we'd love to see you live. So feel free to pop in. Bye-bye now. Whoops. Hold on, guys. You can probably hear me, right? But I don't have my headphones in, so I want to put those in. Because we're probably definitely going to have barking dogs. Deanna, can you hear me? No, we're now connected. Went out a little bit fun here. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay. Hope you guys are doing great. I had a few days largely off. Wasn't really my intention, but the way things were going, it was going to be hard to justify. But I got up earlier than everybody else, so I could pop in a few hours here and there. All right. So this is working, I think. I hope. Let me try something. I'm just going to real quick put on some tunage, and see if I can hear it through the proper. All right, that's perfect. All right, so what's up? I was gone this is why we didn't do it yesterday. We had to do it today because I was going to be coming back from, it's not far from here, but we were spending about 3 days out by Knoebels. I think I told you guys the other week with the kids, and they each brought a friend. You know, our kids are not little tiny ones anymore. They all drive, so we had a bunch of cars. But yeah, so we went to Knoebels, and then 2 of the days, and then we hung out. It was this amazing farmhouse. I got to tell you, it was the Jones farm out in Danville. It was so amazing, and it's got a history. There were at least 4 bedrooms, I guess, because, you know, 2 of the kids have to be in separate rooms because they are different genders and they are underage. So anyway, it was so nice. It was relaxing. I grew up on a farm, so not the same kind of beautiful house, but I kind of took it for granted then. So it's really nice to go back and be able to just, you know, relax. And we had perfect weather when we expected it to be rainy. I don't know where you guys are at, if you're expecting rain, but it was really nice. You know, I hate to say I don't like to come home sometimes, but it's like, that's really nice. But now I'm on 2 months of steady. Okay, so who do we got? CG, it looks like you were the first one in the house. Hi there, my friend. Sherry Romero's in the house. Good to see you, my dear. Kathy Clayton, nice to see you. It looks like Kathy's got the first question. I'll be back up, Kath. AF Vet's in the house. Good to see you, of course. Mike Page, who let me know that he could hear me. And so did AF Vet. LaRocho's in the house. Hi, Lily. And Deanna. Thank you, Deanna. Civil's in the house. She can hear. CG, Civil. Dimple's in the house. Hi, Dimple. Yeah. Appointments. Particularly if you have like a nagging attorney or rep who's like, you need to follow for all these things and make appointments. God, these people are so annoying. Right, Dimple? Yeah, it's true. Okay. So anyway, pop your questions in there. Anybody who has them. Any newbies, feel free to say hello in the chat. At least I'll know you're there. But it's okay if you don't want to. But if you have a question, yeah, for sure, I will get to it. I promise. So Kathy is the first person who posted a question. Filed a reconsideration appeal in April. Received the denial last week. I'm sorry. Does the ALJ hearings move that fast? No, for sure. I suspect what happened was, and it doesn't mean it did, but this would be one common basis why sometimes these reconsiderations go way faster than the initial. You filed it in April. You got a denial early June, I guess, right? Yeah. So it sounds like it was about 2 months. It sounds like you might not have had a lot of, and I could be wrong, treatment. Did you include a lot of new visits and new protocols going on to address your problems? Did you get updated diagnostics if they're, you know, over a year or 2 years old? That might be something. If you didn't say anything new went on, like you didn't really, let's say between when you applied, and I don't know how long ago that was, Kathy, to the time you got denied and appealed for reconsideration, and you put down your new visits. If you didn't put down new visits, then they really already had all the evidence, and they just have to go, well, all righty. Do we feel any differently about this evidence, this exact same evidence as we did 4 months ago? No? Okay. So then it's a rubber stamp. So and then I would say it is likely, unless you have like an age category change during the interim, if you're likely, not always, but I'll explain why, if your treatment has continued to be exactly the same and not show something more limiting in terms of functioning than, you know, what you had from initial, then basically, yeah, you're impaired. We have you limited at this. This is a denial on initial, even though you're limited because you're not limited from all jobs, just from some jobs. And then that's the same presentation for recon. The only way that can sometimes be different is obviously the age change. What was not disabling at 49 could be disabling at 50. And what was not disabling at 54 on initial could be disabling at 55 on recon if you change. But also, sometimes the denial is based on the 12-month duration rule. So if you had gotten like injured and that's why you were admittedly disabled, and even they would say, yeah, there's no job she can do right now. She's in a double hip cast and whatever. Those are expected to heal within less than a year, where you can at least do, say, sedentary work. And if you don't otherwise grid out at a sedentary, depending on your age, that would be, I've seen the letters that say, we do realize you can't work at this time. However, we do not think it's going to last 12 months. So you can't prevail on that because SSD is not for the super temporary disabling moments we have in our lives. All right, let me scroll down. But, going back to your question, did I get on a little tangent? The ALJ does not move that fast because they got to give you 75-day notice for the hearing. You can waive that to require they only give you 20 days notice. I don't generally recommend that unless you have a very good reason, because you had insufficient evidence thus far. By curbing from 75 down to 20, you are now eliminating more time you could be getting more evidence. So you're kind of hurting your case oftentimes. Also, if your evidence wasn't strong enough the first time, a lot of times getting it, unless you could have used an updated MRI to show that nerve impingement is now in 2 discs, not 1, or whatever, whatever might be going on with the back, then you might not get time to get that in. I get clients where they're having a surgery 3 months after our hearing. Too bad, so sad. Not much you can do about that. They're not going to generally delay a hearing so that you can have that surgery. Now, if your evidence was good and your doctors were very articulate, if you were unable to do even sedentary or any other job that you'd be held liable for proving you can't, then that would have already been in the records regardless of the surgery. So it really got to look at a lot of different things. Aside from the fact that there's a 75-day notice requirement for you, unless you waive it down to 20, I'm not seeing them as soon as they get your appeal scheduling it 75 days later. There have been times when we've seen it, but I think generally that's not the case. And I'm seeing them be a little bit longer now. And I think it's because in the last year and a half, well, maybe even 2 years, remember they had such a big backlog on initial and recon. It was ridiculous. People were waiting 15 months and some still do. And then they kind of cleaned it up in the last year and got those things moving. They got, more attention on initials and recons by the state DDS workers. Remember a few months ago, we talked about this, how they took CDRs out of the picture so those folks could focus on getting through these proper initial and, recon reviews. So that CDRs were then taken back to the feds for them to handle that, so that the state workers could just kind of like not deviate and have to do CDRs, and they were just doing initial and recons. So now all those backlog of initial and recons, I suspect, are now, the denied ones anyway, are plugging along to their ALJ hearings. So now the ALJs have a ton. That's my guess. I haven't read anything about it in particular this week or recently. So I'm trying to think. It could be 6 months. It really varies. I'm trying to think any recent ones that I just got scheduled. I should have checked it, but I didn't know you were going to ask this question. Happy Thursday, Deanna. I'm just scrolling for questions, guys. Civil Chick is saying they had tornadoes. Hope everyone's okay. That's very scary. Did you ever have recurring nightmares when you were a kid? I had a couple of them. One of them was tornadoes. And it would be like, I would be at the house I grew up in and I'd look out the back over the cornfield or whatever, and I'd see. Now, I loved, Wizard of Oz was, awesome movie, nice and a little bit scary. And, back in my generation, which is probably the same as some of you guys, you only saw it once a year. It came on TV. You planned your schedule around that. You had the TV guide. Remember the TV guide? Or else you bought it from the Girl Scouts or a school fundraiser. A thing of the past. But yeah, we'd watch it every year. There was no way anything else was going to go on when that came on. There was no such thing as recording systems, DVDs, or what do we use? 8 tracks. Not 8 tracks for movies. That was for music. Anyway, Dimple says, hello from Ohio and my chiropractor's office. You're in your chiropractor's office. Oh my goodness. I'm really tired of all these appointments. I bet. PT, not knocking chiro, but since we're talking about chiro, y'all probably heard me say that I think physical therapy prescribed by the specialist ortho probably still carries a little bit more weight than chiro. Okay, just saying. And good morning to Virginia. CG says, denied on initial, did not appeal, now decided to try again with lawyer, turned 50. December, new diagnosis, also a surgery scheduled. Okay, so you turned 50, so your big at least one of your battles is to prove you could do no more than sedentary work. Shoulder issues could impact lifting, not so much the walking aspect, perhaps, unless you have other issues, but the lifting. Will it bring you down below 10 pounds and cut you out to sedentary? Don't know, but that's kind of like one of the main things you and your lawyer will be looking at. And he'll probably be suggesting, follow-up. So there's kind of evidence in the file of, yeah, we know he had surgery, or we knew this, we knew he had shoulder complaints, but how do we know how much he can lift? I mean, is it a shoulder complaint when he lifts, a 50-pound, 40-pound bag of cement, or is it shoulder pain when he lifts a gallon of milk or 2 gallons of milk? But, where is the limitation? Because, all of those limitations I just mentioned would stem from different degrees of, or different kinds of injury, really, or, damage to a shoulder. Jerry Romero says, any last minute advice for my hearing? I'm 6 days away. No, I don't have any additionals. I don't have your stuff in front of me, so I really can't. Ann Donovan's in the house. Hi, Ann. Be yourself. You have a lawyer, right? And he or she's going to presumably make sure that the proper questions are asked, because the judge might have his own favorites to ask. He may or may not choose to be asking other ones relative to your case file in front of him. Sometimes they defer that to the claimant's own lawyer, in which case, I don't know how your lawyer does it. I know that within days of the hearing, we have a pre-hearing prep meeting on Zoom or on phone. My clients, and that's where I go through all the questions that I want to know what he's going to say if they're asked. And then I take my notes. And then if the judge doesn't ask those questions, or if he does and the answer doesn't come out the way my client's reality is, just because of the way it was acted and the clients are nervous, I will already know how to pull him back in and ask additional questions on the same thing to get him to fully explain. I'll even say, we discussed this. You were telling me some other things about that. Remember the story about the ladder? Can you, do you want to share that to the judge? Because it might be illustrative of the problem you're talking about. Or something like that, because he and I had already discussed these things. So now we have some concrete examples, Sherry, of illustrating limitation, and it could be mental health things. It could be let's say someone's prone to panic attacks. And it's one thing to say I have panic attacks. It's another one to say, every few months I try to go to the store. My therapist says I should try to get out there and get desensitized. So I'll go to the store with a loved one. And the last 3 times I got into the store the first time, but then I had to come right back out and go to the car. Second time I got in and got to the first aisle and I even picked something out. Like, you could really give your examples of how impaired it is, even if it's slightly improving. Like the second time she got to the first aisle and picked something out, then she had to leave. And then third time, halfway down the aisle, got 3 things into the car before, whatever, I'm using a particular example, but you could show how by telling about real examples recently too. If it's something that my last panic attack was so bad. And when was that? That was January of, what year was that? 2023. That's not gonna be anything. That's a panic attack in a prior life. So it's the things that habitually hold you back, so that you can't. It's one thing to have a ball, you drop a ball in any area, all of us, once every so often, short of being like a brain surgeon, we all, can make those mistakes. It's when it becomes so much that you can't do a very basic thing. And dropping the ball on something very complicated is not going to eliminate a lot of jobs. It just means, okay, you can't be a brain surgeon, but you could do something else. So focus on the very basic things, I think, of functioning and just your basic easy life at home, if you have an easy life at home when you're not working, and how those things that it would be the most lightest of weight, the shortest of distances. Focus on which things of those, the easiest job might require, but they don't require more. That's what you want to knock out, because most of us are trying to knock out the easiest jobs. Certainly anyone under 50 has got to do that. You got to be knocking out all 12,000 plus jobs. The over 50s get a slight, if they can meet certain 3 criteria, can knock out, well, they don't have to prove they can't do sedentary. They don't have to prove they can't do, but the under 50s, you guys have it the toughest. And that's kind of what I would do in terms of focusing on if your lawyer doesn't tell you this, if you're pro se or whatever, those really basic, like I can't even live basically in a normal way. I have to, and it's hard too when someone lives alone. A lot of times if you live with family, they pull up the slack and get the basic cleaning done or more, because there's a bunch of healthy people in the house. But the people that live alone, I think it's really tough, because, if you want to have basic hygiene in your house, you got to do something. Now, by and large, I never hear anyone that says I can keep my house the way I used to. They will say, I do once in a blue moon. When it's really getting bad, I clean the bathroom, but it's really hard because just bending down hurts me if it's going to be for, even for 3 minutes over the tub. And then I'm stuck. And then I have to go lie down for like hours because now I just screwed up my back because I'm not supposed to bend like that. But they'll say the house has to get clean. And if they don't have money for a cleaner, and if they don't have close friends or loved ones around, because a lot of times they'll also be like, it's not like it should be, but my friend does come over at least once a month and do one or two, the grimy jobs that I can't get to, the harder ones, a good vacuuming, So, you can show your reality in a variety of ways when you're answering those kind of questions and preparing for hearings. Dimple says, I'm really hoping that my recent MRI results will help with my case. And also, do you find that approvals are updated with onset dates of the updated results, if that makes sense? I think I know what you're saying. I think Dimple's saying, if I get approved, will it be as per the new information as of the date that was recently submitted versus, let's say, in the beginning of the case? Not necessarily. Sometimes it'll be an approval, let's say on Recon, but they are going to agree that, yes, you were indeed disabled back before you even applied, even though the initial people said no. And that might be because now new information that wasn't there from that time period is now in the file, or they see something now that's newer evidence. However, it so directly correlates with when that pain was really evidenced, even though there was no MRI yet back in, mid 2024 when you apply, whatever it is. Sometimes they will say, yeah, okay, now this diagnostic and this damage, the complaints about it were being discussed over here. She just couldn't get the MRI. So, she eventually got the MRI. And they don't always do that, by the way. A lot of times they will not. It's very true that a lot of times they'll be like, we finally have the MRI. Now we can finally, as of the date of the MRI, she's disabled. It's a little bit outside reality, but it's what they do sometimes. It's outside reality because we know let's say it's some sort of arthritic, bone structures in that spine or whatever. They didn't happen overnight, probably. Right. So, and while we don't know when a herniation occurs or when a nerve is first impinged upon, I'd like to think that more of them would correlate the pain that was described 9 months ago in records, and it took till now to get that MRI. It relates back, the MRI, the only reason they're there to get the MRI is because of that pain, indicating that something could show up in the MRI. Yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Kathy Clayton has a new diagnosis from a neurologist, and you're age 62 years young. Of several new diagnoses, she says. Severe cervical spinal stenosis, carpal tunnel syndrome, lesions on ulnar nerve, had 38 years at one job. 38 years isn't going to matter, but I think you've got, at 62, severe cervical spinal stenosis. Severe stenosis, like central canal stenosis, is something they do take significant note of if you've been complaining of pain in that area for quite some time, because it can be a likely cause, right? And that the neck can, even if your arms, say, are totally fine, but you have carpal tunnel, but let's say you didn't, severe cervical spinal stenosis can be a definite lifting restriction, right? Because if we lift hard, we can pop that, because we're using our shoulders and it's really, and our upper spine, really. We're using a lot of things, but amongst them. So that, and we know Kathy at 62, if you're going to grade out, which I'm sure your lawyer's aiming for, you need to prove you can't lift that 20 to 50 pounds, 20 pounds kind of frequently during the day, or 25 pounds frequently during the day, and 50 at least occasionally. That's a heavy weight. So at 62, you don't have to prove all those lighter weights. You just have to prove that big, horrible one to get that one prong of the grade, and then you just got to prove the other prongs. But I think that spinal stenosis would also potentially go towards the exertional thing you have to prove, which is limited to light or sedentary, as well as can't do my prior job, it's too much lifting. If your prior job was sedentary, then you've got a little bit of more work to do, right, Kathy? Because how do you prove with spinal stenosis you can't lift? Maybe it hurts when you walk around. They're going to try to say you could do sedentary. Now, I would argue, and I do, that when you have a bad neck, working in front of a desk or a computer, and almost a lot of the sedentary jobs are, this kind of stuff, and if you try, you'll probably find out, I can't do that for very long. My neck is going to start hurting. That leaning over towards my keyboard or whatever I can't do that 8 hours a day. The carpal tunnel syndrome would also impede that. So that would help prevent that you could do that prior job. You just got to make sure then you've got your exertional down pat, because they will try to say your prior job, if it was a skilled job that you could transfer those skills to that sedentary job, they're going to say you are limited to, and you have to also prove you can't transfer the skills. So, right. That they are non-transferable for you for whatever reason. One of Kathy Clayton's new diagnoses is peripheral neuropathy. Would that be in your upper extremities, your lower extremities, or both? Because the lower can really impede walking safely, securely, and your feet hurt or whatever. And upper, of course, is going to be all that dexterity, like that carpal tunnel you're talking about. AFet says, I turned 55 next week. Happy birthday. How will the grid rules work for my case that is in step 3, initial DDS review? Okay, they could come forward with a finding of disabled back when you were 54 if you meet those grids, or if you don't meet the grid for 54 and they find, well, he can't do light work, well, he can't do medium work, so even if you could do light work, they could find that you meet the disabled definition the day before your birthday. It's always the day before, and give you a win that way. It won't be any back benefits, but it would be still a win and put the case behind you, which is sometimes worth its weight in gold. Remember to do a grid, guys. You all have to, if you have had a skilled job in your last five years, whatever your past relevant 5-year period is, for most of you, it's going to be the past 5. You need to prove that for some reason you can't transfer those mental skills that you gained from that job, the ones you used on the job. You have to prove that you can't take them to that less arduous job they're going to have to define you as under the RFC section, between step 3 and step 4. So we've talked about this before. A very unfortunately common way is because a lot of people have mental health challenges. It could stem from the fact that they're disabled and they're having such a difficult time navigating it, adjusting to it, the quality of life differences. It could be for an entirely other reason. It could be they're just having growing anxiety and insomnia. So if that's the case, you want to treat for that so you can hit that prong that you cannot, because if you're having anxiety, these mental health symptoms often make us unable to focus on those prior skills and be able to remember them enough. We haven't done them now in a year to transfer them to a new job. So, and then if we can get into the weeds a little bit more, because sometimes the knowledge you have to have for that job have to be very current, and that job is always changing. It could be tech, is an example. If a person can't learn the new things expeditiously and transfer that to, again, a new job that's more sedentary than perhaps what they had, that's another way. And all that depends on usually mental health treatment. And I don't mean just going once. I mean probably weekly therapy. And that's just to prove that you got the anxiety that's distracting. This is not to prove that you're off the skids at all. We have those cases too. That's the ones that are very, very difficult, because very few people are unable to work at any job due to mental limitations. Very few people. So don't ever rely on that. I know people who just, because they feel what they feel and experience what they experience, they think it's going to pan out under the law, and it's generally not going to do that. So, and they ignore the physical stuff that would be so easy to find because they're in their 50s or something, and they don't do it because, gosh darn it, I mentally can't do any jobs. I mentally won't be showing up on time. Whether it's depression or anxiety or I would, did you want one? I would be, ripping people a new, what, anytime they spoke to me or looked at me cross-eyed, whatever it is. And let's say their medical records show, you have difficulties getting along with people. They're just going to say you're going to have to do one of those jobs where you don't have to deal with the public or the coworkers, So bigger point is, if you're, using the grids and you've got to prove you can't mentally do those other jobs, you also still have to, you got to remember, you have to prove that physically you couldn't do it either, and that you couldn't take those mental skills that you learned and transfer them to a sedentary job you could otherwise do, or a light job. So really, really, really important, guys, to follow up with the physical impairments you have that you might not even know you have. We get older and we just blow off our aches and our pains because it's, I'm getting older. I'm in my 50s or 60s. And that is so hurtful to your case. And if you get denied, you're going to know why. If you've gotten a denial, now you know why. Yeah, you have to, there's the physical and there's mental for the grids, and the mental really only applies if you have skilled work or semi-skilled work, not for the unskilled. But I see it a lot lately. People are like me, gosh darn it, they don't want to go to a doctor. And they're like, it's just old age stuff. I know they're not going to be able to do anything for me. I'm like, yeah, but guess what? You have a case. This isn't all about your health and your physical feelings. It's, do you want to win your case? So then you've got to get the proof that you indeed could not carry 100 pounds every day, multiple times. Go do it. My back could never do that. Blah, blah, blah. It hurts if I lift. Well, then you're going to have to prove it. No one up there is going to listen to what you say and call that medical evidence. And as you know, the law says they have to have pretty robust medical evidence that will, not just a snapshot, one visit, you got to really pursue it like you have the impairment. because you do. So get off the old, I'm used to just pushing through. You got to stop that. I know that's a worker mentality. We all, probably everyone here has it. And you have to no longer keep your mouth shut with your doctors and going to specialists and saying, I want a specialist or I want PT or, yeah. And I always say advocate for yourself too, because well, my doctor didn't tell me I should go to PT. I'm like, well, so what? Maybe he didn't have his coffee that day. You tell him that you've heard that it might be helpful. What do you think, doc? Should we do a course of PT? I mean, you're the adult in the room. You are the adult on your own body. The doctor is somebody else. So gotta be proactive. From the sunny PNW. Refresh me, what's PNW? Ringo? Civil Chick says a tornado hit the town next door, just went north of us. Oh my gosh, I hope everyone's okay. Yep, those recurring dreams. Haven't had one in I probably even had them from little through my teen years. I had them a lot. I don't know why. Just some sort of insecurity, I guess. Don't know if I had them in my adult. I probably did have. Oh, I did have one here and there. Yeah. I remember I had one. I told my dad over coffee before my first law firm, and I was going to hit the road and get to work. And what did I tell him? In my dream, this is weird. Okay, I worked in White House, New Jersey. Commuted there from Chester, New Jersey. I don't know if any of you guys are Jersey people. This is Morris County. I'm in coffee with my dad. I'm telling him literally about my tornado dream. So now I'm like in my early 20s. So I guess I haven't had it in a million years, but I guess I had it at least that late. This was the weirdest thing. And so I'm telling him my tornado dream over a cup of coffee before I left for work. And that day at work, I'm waiting at my boss's office door, and his office door, his window, he had this big window and it overlooked Route 22 in White House. And as I'm talking to him, he's actually on the phone. I'm waiting for him. He's talking to someone on the phone and I'm waiting for him to be done because I had to ask him a question. I didn't do Social Security at this time. This is all insurance defense litigation. And all of a sudden he's on the phone. He's going, my gosh. And he looks out the window and he's like shocked. I look out the window. There is a tornado. I'm not kidding. Going down the back of the stores across the way. I feel like it was an AMP, but I'm probably wrong. Right in behind them, a tornado trolling along what would, not on Route 22, but parallel to it and really close. I'm like, holy. And that was the day after my dream I probably hadn't had in 10 years. How weird is that? Very strange. And Donovan. Oh, by the way, do you guys know Anne? Anne is a colleague of mine. She does Social Security disability also. So Anne says I was in a tornado. And by the way, feel free to reach out to Anne if any of you, what state are you in, Anne? Not that the state matters, guys. She can handle any state, but Anne's awesome. Anne was in a tornado in 1965 and still have nightmares about it, especially since there was one last year in Bentonville and Rogers. Which state, Anne? I know I'm going to blow it if I say it. I want to say like Alabama, but I don't think so. I know it's kind of a distance from me, and it's southern. Adam's in the house. Hi, Adam. Hello to you, Stephanie, and everybody else out there. God bless. Favorable outcome. You got a favorable? Did we talk about this? I don't want to mix up anybody and say, oh, you got a favorable. And then they're like, no, I didn't. Haven't had my hearing yet. Dimple says, I think you did though, right, Adam? My insurance only pays for 20 PT visits, and I'm using those for post-op appointments. Yeah. Dimple, will that kick in again in January? Like your new PT coverage? The insurance companies are horrible. If so, a lot of people do that. They'll get their next body part lined up if they have a different body part. Like you had surgery on something apparently, and that's what you're having the surgery on, the PT on, which is very typical. And then if you have other old age or otherwise musculoskeletal problems, think about addressing those, unless it's something where you have to readdress the kind of PT you're going for post-surgical. And even if you do, guys, have PT on a different area, never stop making the complaints about symptoms on the parts that you're no longer treating for with PT. You're just getting it monitored, or maybe you're doing injections or something. Don't be shy about those complaints. Do not be shy. Or suggesting, therapies that you want. Even if the doctor says, no, that wouldn't really be appropriate for you because of this other thing you have. Okay, that's fine. Make sure that's in the record because it shows that you asked about it. People ask about new therapies because they're still bothered physically by something that still bothers them, despite maybe a recent therapy or pain meds. If you have pain meds and that's all you do for a claimed painful body part that's limited, that's not going to get you far. They're just one small little piece. Because if you're not feeling the need to do anything, and I get it, you're like, it's not going to work if I do. I get it, and you're probably right. But for evidence purposes, what does it say when you're only just doing the medication? It's working sufficiently. You're not even bothering to pursue more. You're not bothering at all about it. So you got to be proactive. I don't think just plain medications refills are going to cut the bread here. Rain Gal says, new meds are kicking my butt. Feels like treatment is worse than the original problem, but that's part of being disabled, isn't it? You know, I know medications are horrible. I can't wait till the research starts on if they do what they're starting to do now, because they've got probably government support, but that could end obviously in a couple of years. But putting the studies into some of those healthier, natural medicinal things without putting in all those preservatives and other things so they can patent them and all that, I think we'd probably have a whole different situation. But I'll probably be dead before we see that happen. I mean, everything moves so slowly. Yeah, so sometimes the medications are intolerable, right? And someone who needs to have the medication in order to not feel pretty significant pain, that's a horrible place to be. My heart goes out to you, because yeah, you take the med and the pain quells down to tolerable if you're not doing anything and aggravating it, and you're napping because it makes you drowsy. You know, they got to do something different. But then if you don't take it, you're not going to fall asleep because the pain is so bad, and you're going to be ripping your family's heads off because it's painful and we get grumpy. Outfish. The MRI caused me to almost have a panic attack. I don't think that I can do that again. 10 minutes of agony. But you got through it. Good for you. Look what you did. You got through it. You almost had a panic attack. You did not have a panic attack. Also, MRIs, you know, these providers that bought lay down MRIs back when that was pretty much all that was available. And this is just me going off. I've been talking about this 20 years ago. There are stand-up MRIs, open MRIs. I've never had one, but I don't even know if I've had an MRI. Yeah. Open ones are for the people with claustrophobia. And stand-up ones are invaluable, I think, because they do the lay-down one for people that have disc problems and back pain. Yet the back pain is often aggravated when they're standing or sitting upright, because the gravity is pulling on the discs, right? With our body weight attached to it. So when they do the lay-down, they go, I don't see anything. I don't see any nerve impinged here, say. I mean, think about it. When you lay down, everything opens up. When you go like this, everything gets pulled down. So I really wish that they do have the open MRIs. They do have the stand-up MRIs. So I always wish people could just do the stand-up MRIs. But I feel like the people that bought the lay-down MRIs, they're not going to go buy a new stand-up. I guess the MRI machines are extraordinarily expensive, and that's a lot of money to outlay to grab the people that are claustrophobic when most people are not for that. I mean, nobody likes them, but you mostly get through it. So maybe it means driving far. I don't know. I just wish that they would get more stand-up MRIs for that reason, and then more open MRIs for your reason, Outfish. Something to consider, though, and particularly for you MRI people that have done lay down and have musculoskeletal disc problems in particular. And if your results of your lay down MRI are mild, maybe it's because it's lay down. I'm just throwing it out there. My lawyer said he saw legal errors. This is 4856. MJ. Hey, MJ. My lawyer said he saw legal errors done by the judge on my claim. Okay. Now I'm waiting to see what happens. Is that good news to hear for my ear? Well, I assume you got denied by the ALJ, and if you saw legal errors, he presumably, did you talk to him? Did he appeal to the appeals council and point out those legal errors and ask them to take a look at it and see if they agree? That would be your next step. Maybe that's what you meant in there, but you didn't know to say it. And they will take a look, and then they will either decline to review, or because the judge did enough, like he stayed in the parameters he had to do. But doesn't necessarily mean it brings you to award, or he doesn't. And then if the AC declines to review, now you can refile again if you haven't blown through your DLI yet, or your SSI, of course. So, I mean, is it good news? It's not good news that you lost at the ALJ, because now you're still in the battle, but it's the judge thinks he sees appealable error. So remember, not all legal errors are appealable errors. It's got to be generally, I believe, something that would be material to the outcome. That the outcome could have gone differently if the judge didn't do this, and they send it back to the judge to redo it and follow these directions and don't screw up and miss them again. Civil says, trying to get my injection for back scheduled. Always something. Having my CE consultative exam July 10th, making progress. Well, that's good. But yeah, I have someone who recently got a epidural or something scheduled, injection. Can't get it till August. I think it's pathetic. So guys, that's another thing. I was having this conversation quite a bit this week. When you leave a doctor's appointment, you have to be the proactive one to get the next appointment scheduled. Don't wait until you're gone and then try to reach them by the phone, and then they get it done there. Always have your next one laid out. And if you guys are talking about injections or PT or some sort of therapy, conservative therapy you're going to pursue, or a surgery if that's what you want, you need to be the squeaky wheel. Get them moving. They have other patients that are pushing them, and that's why those people get to go first, and you get to sit back and wait till there's an organic opening because someone, I don't know, passed away and gave up their appointment. Not to be morbid, but you all should be pushing. Doc, you said I was going to get a cervical epidural, whatever, a steroidal injection. I want to get that sooner rather than later. And they'll say, oh yeah, talk to this. Whatever it is, do it. You have to be that person on the phone making it happen. And it's not like you have a full-time job. So hop to it. Mr. Donnie Doomsday. Donnie, don't be so doomsday-ish. Had my PERC interview. Okay. For those of you who don't know, PERC is pre-effectuate review contact. It's for SSI. After a person has been found disabled, it's to then confirm where their financials are to make sure they are still eligible for any SSI at all now that they've been found disabled. The other prong is the financial. And if they are eligible, does it have to be offset? Like, do they have a little income coming in that would reduce the amount the SSI fund has to spend on them? That kind of thing. They're asking for me to sign for how much I pay in rent. They sent it as one household split. But my lease I signed is a 2-household lease. I sent that. Will I have problems? I don't know. I don't have a firm grasp on how they're doing households and splits and all that right now. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is they dock you 1/3, but you don't want that, of course. You know, you want to have, particularly if you're paying rent, and if you're paying at least, I'd like to think if you're paying at least that, the presumed market value, PMV, then that is assumed to be a business arrangement, I think. If you're paying at least that amount, this is general. There could be little exceptions, but that was that newer rule that came out not that many months ago. Made it a little easier that if you're paying that, you're paying sufficiently for them to send you your shelter portion of that nearly $1,000 SSI maximum amount. All right. So I can't say whether you're going to have problems, but fingers crossed for you, Mr. Donnie. Keep your chin up. Virginia Gomez has a question. She's 53, California, got a sentence for remanded. Commissioner and the plaintiff agree for a new decision. I have to read it. It's remanded on step 4, guys. Wait, is it step 4 or sentence 4? I'm not going to be able to answer this, Virginia. If it was step 4, it means they didn't properly evaluate whether you could do your prior work or not, which is something that they kind of have to do at age 53 if you've met the one prong for the grid, like the exertional limitation, then they got to see, can you do a prior job? I'm curious what that is. Sentence 4 or step? All defy our rugs. Okay. Failed sclera contacts and non-dominant eye with different strengths between eyes, much more power in that one causes symptoms. Will this help my case for less than sedentary grid? It's really not going to affect your exertional, and that's what less than sedentary is. What it could do, if you have, not hopefully, but you presumably have, there's presumably body parts, joints and muscles and spines and everything that are not as strong today at 54 as they were when you were 20. And if you've gotten them properly worked up and evidenced as being problematic, like is there something wrong with them, degeneration at least, and if so, how bad is it, which comes through continuous conservative therapies and stuff and visits back with the doc. You need to have that in order to be able to grid out. And by the way, when you're 54, you do not have to prove that you are less than sedentary. Even if you could do sedentary work, you can win, but you have to prove that you are limited to sedentary. You have to prove that you can't do your prior job, which could be because of the vision. I don't know what your prior job was. If it requires significant acuity and seeing, like frequently the job required, and I don't mean just like looking over there, I mean like usually close up and stuff like that, then you can prove the second prong, can't do my prior job. And the question is, okay, but was that a skill job? If that was a skill job, can Ruggs transfer those skills that he had at that past relevant work to a job that is in that sedentary range he could do? And yeah. So, but you don't have to, I mean, you mentioned less than sedentary. You don't have to go that far. You don't have to be that physically, exertionally limited. You just have to be, you can't do light work. You have to be unable to do light work. And of course, next year you'll be 55. And then even if you could do light work, you could still, you pass the first prom. 486 says, my lawyer took my case and said if he saw some legal errors on my denial, he would take it. And he did. What are my odds getting my SSD? And would I get back pay from the day I applied for my benefits? There is no odds book. Are you kidding me? You think they put it out an odds book like people can make bets? There's no such animal, so I can't speculate one way or another. Remember, legal error does not mean you had a strong case or you have strong evidence. So I really can't say. And you would get back pay if you are awarded back to when he said, minus your 12-month limitation on months before your application, as well as your 5-month waiting period. So however those line up in the past is what you would get. So it depends on what they find. Truly make the parrot talk, man. I can't make her talk. Sometimes she talks. Like at night, she'll say night night when I'm turning out the lights to go to bed. Right? Tasha, can you talk? He wants you to talk. Yeah. Say hello. 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 Being shy. Just being shy. She says hello. She says night night. Just a few other things that she's picked up. I think from when I yelled at dogs. It happens so often that she's kind of picked on it. Kathy says, you are so right about the aches and pains as we get older. I know, because I have them too. I'm fighting them right now. I'm trying to prevent by being a little more active. And you guys can use that. It is so valuable. You have to. Anything that's old and decrepit that you're like, oh my God, I feel like an old lady or an old man. When I do this, think of which body parts are causing you pain and start getting them worked up. Usually it's an orthopedist. And then be that proactive patient. Treat yourself as if you had a little kid and there's these problems with your little kid. You'd be like demanding that they go to the doctor and demanding in a nice way, pushing to get all this, evaluation, treatment, all that stuff. Don't treat yourself any differently. Dimple says, I had blown off my lower back pain originally until my attorney pushed me to check it out. Guilty as charged. And I finally got an MRI and discovered that I have a bad herniated disc and a badly bulging vertebrae. Yes. Pushed you. You could say nag. That's fine. Remember, I don't know if you remember. I haven't said it lately, but nag hag admitted. Pacific Northwest. Yeah, okay. The beautiful Pacific Northwest. Barbara Gillespie's in the house. Sorry for being late. It is no problem. Thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. Can you explain the process of widow's benefits? Husband died 5 years ago. He was on Social Security. I'm on SSI disability. Been waiting 6 months now. Okay, so first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. That's terrible. How old are you? I don't know how old you are. You said you've been waiting 6 months now. Did you apply? I don't know where you're at, so I'm not sure what you want me to. If you are seeking widow's benefits, husband died 5 years ago. I don't know if you were on SSI probably after that, when he was, you no longer had the household income with him. I'm assuming you are between 50 and 60, Barbara. Otherwise, you won't be getting widow's benefits. I just need more details. So the fact that you've been waiting, I'm going to assume you mean you've been waiting on a widow claim. And it should, if you're over 50 and under 60, you should be able to, I'm trying to think of checking off on my criteria here. Yeah, it should just be a little simpler. Although I have a widow's case that they're doing the same thing. You would think they would just be like, I think what they're doing is they're reevaluating your disability since you got an SSI at some point. Maybe you were under 50, so all you had was SSI after your husband passed. And then now that you're over 50, I don't know, I'm speculating here. Now you can apply for the widows, and you've done that, and they're like, okay, now we just got to make sure that it is definitely within the 7-year period that it's required to be since he passed. So you've met that criteria. So then the question is she still disabled? They might be doing a CDR on you, in essence, because they have to find out, is she still disabled? If they just found you SSI disabled 6 months ago, or something recently, I would like to think if you're on a 3-year diary or a 5 to 7 year mine diary, why do they have to recheck you again? They already decided that you didn't even need to have a CDR for 5 years. So why wouldn't they just switch you to the widows and call it a day? And depending on how much the widows is, you may or may not be even needing SSI anymore. But I hope it beats the SSI amount. Because it's nice to get off SSI. You have so much more, rights to do things. Arkansas. Gosh, I knew it was an A. Well, I didn't actually know it was an A. That's Ann. Ann's in Arkansas. Arkansas. So, hi, Ann. I've tried to get Ann to come on with me, but I haven't seen any positive. People are shy. That's all right. That used to be me. Dimple says coverage renews, resets in January. Okay, that's in 6 months. So assuming you're still fighting the good fight, that's something to think about. Sybil says, you get rid of one pain, then you notice another pain. Yeah, I think it's probably true. People are, what did my father used to say to me? If I would complain about something hurting as a kid, he'd be like, well, maybe he was using a hammer at the time. He'd be like, well, if you want, put your hand out. I'll give you a pain in this finger and you'll forget all about that pain in your foot. Or that's my dad. Yeah, we focus on the big one and the little ones don't mean so much. So that's something, it's very hard to get out of the mindset, but everyone filing for Social Security has to do it or should do it to reduce the chance of being denied, increase the chance of an award, depending on their whole case and everything. Sybil says, I am scheduled for another MRI of my brain. Looking at vessels in brain, I already had 2 aneurysms coiled. I pray they don't find any new ones. I pray with you too. I would definitely pray for you on that one, Sybil. Fingers crossed we don't find more. Christina from California is in the house. Hi, Christina. Christina says, good morning from California. Good morning to you too. It's afternoon here. Still morning for you, of course. Black is in the house. Says, Walter's giving Social Security ideas to make it harder to get Social Security. No, I'm sure he's not. Come on. Christina. Oh, hello from California. Sorry, Christina. Yes, S. Lewis is reminding you all that after appeals counsel, you can file in federal district court if you can figure out how to do it and or get someone to do it for you. People can figure it out by themselves. I've known of 2 people who did that, non-lawyers, not in any way, affiliated with any kind of practice or anything like that. Probably just, I don't remember what they did, but yeah, I don't remember. But it wasn't anything, highly skilled. And they both, two completely different people in 2 different states, filed their own federal district court case, which they got a remand. Appeals counsel wouldn't do it. They poo-pooed them. And they did it, and then that's when I got involved and did the second case, because once it came back, they needed a lawyer to go to hearing with the remand. And both of those cases we won, which we wouldn't even have had if they hadn't gone to federal district court. I assume they couldn't get a federal district court attorney to represent them, or they couldn't find one to even ask. So you can you can check under like AVO, I think, and NOSCR and Nader, and they probably have lists of attorneys that specialize in that particular section of the process. And the beauty of doing federal district court is that while you're doing that and waiting for that whole thing to happen, assuming someone else is handling it for you or not, you can also file a new claim on the new period that starts no earlier than the day after the judge's hearing decision. So if you still have DLI left, boom, you can file that next one. So if the district court kicks you to the curb, you already have a case going for the newer period. You lost the old one. That's going to become carved in stone. Yes, that means those back benefits are gone, but you can at least have a new one. And remember, your DLI is going to expire if you're not working at least a very minimal part-time. Deanna says, I know treatment is necessary, but $50 a visit, is that like a specialist visit, is taxing, and that's not including the monthly premium. I have to keep going because it has been too long, a nightmare. Yeah, it is a nightmare, Deanna. I agree with you. It is. Specialist, now if it's PT, $50 is a lot. Particularly if you're supposed to be going 2 or 3 times a week, which is the typical standard course that one would expect for a significant impairment. But if it's a specialist and you're only going to go every couple months, maybe it's not so bad. It's all bad. And if you don't have a working spouse who has family health insurance, or at least the spouse and the worker through work, then yeah, then you guys are paying premiums and it's not easy. Rug says, see, my prior job was sedentary for 20 years. You and me both. Yikes. Yeah, so I forget what all your details were, but whatever I said before applies. Virginia says, number 2, sentence 4. I'll have to go look up what that is. I don't recall. But it sounds like you got a remand, so that's good. Deb H. You're not the old Deb, are you? Is this your first time here? That will tell me my answer. I haven't seen my other friend Deb here in a long time. She's everyone's friend here, but it's been a while. So I worry about her. Barbara says, I'm 59, applied 12/4 of 25. Okay, so 6 months ago. Website says they're working on it as quickly as possible. Of course they do. Say that. Received SSI in April of 26. Okay. Received 2 payments already for SSI. They're calling the agents. Oh my gosh. That sounds like a technical holdup. I would get on that. And if it goes on much longer, do you know how much your widows is going to be? It's widows, right? At least they got you the money from the SSI, but it's like, what's the problem? I assume you're reaching out to them saying, if the agents say they don't even know what the holdup is, there's nothing to say you can't write to your congressperson and say, listen, I had a widows and I had SSI. I was found disabled. My husband died 5 years ago within the 7-year window. I mean, I'm disabled in the 7-year window, and they found me disabled, but for some reason they haven't paid out on the widows. Now, keep in mind, make sure that you've provided them all the paperwork they want. The proof of marriage and all that kind of business, death certificate, all that. But yeah, it's ludicrous, truly. KU Thunder is in the house. Hey, KU. Or should I say, hey, Thunder. Good afternoon, Stephanie. It was hard for me at first, but I have learned it's best to complain to the nurses and doctor now. Appreciate your lives. Thanks. And you're so right. And it is hard. Yeah. We're so many people, hardworking people are just, they're not complainers. And because they're not complainers is how they probably had a successful working life, they have the Social Security to go after. But it's really hard to become that person. I mean, I hope there's no Karens here. I don't mean to offend anybody with it. But we use the word, don't be such a Karen in this house. I mean, we're all like joking, saying obnoxious things. And of course, our newest one is don't be a Linda. And again, there's a lot of Linda, and I have friends that are, it's just from memes or the Linda one. Should I say it? There is a video. It's out on whatever social media. And I don't know whether my husband saw it on Facebook. I think I saw it on Facebook. This is years ago now. And it's a little boy, and he's being spoken to by someone named Linda, which could be like an aunt, or maybe it's his mother and he calls her by the first name, or it's a babysitter or something like that. Someone way older than him. And she's trying to tell him to do something. He's going, Linda. Like, shut up. I got to tell you something. Like, it was just it's so funny. And he's so adorable. And I mean, for all I know, it could be AI generated, but I don't think there was AI when this one came out. But it's just so funny. So they'll do that to me sometimes, my kids. Linda. And I'll be like, go to your room. Just kidding. They're a little old for that. And then, of course, the Karen jokes. And I think for guys, isn't it Chad? You could be don't be a Chad. Anybody? Because anything we say about girls can be flipped to boys. That's how I look at it. S. Lewis says, there is a person currently on SSDI who went through the federal district court process with an attorney. It was an experience for sure. The district court judge kind of scolded. Now, the person that's the client doesn't really, if he is a lawyer, he doesn't have to do anything when it goes to federal district court. Not a thing. They're not going to take testimony, nothing. It's all going to be those papers that were already done. They're all going to argue about them, and the lawyer's going to do a federal brief. So I'm not sure. I think you're saying the district court scolded the ALJ. Obviously, the ALJ is not even involved in the federal district court case. What it means is if the federal district court judge who writes the opinion or makes the order, I mean, by definition, when your order that you as a judge, ALJ, issued, and it gets overturned for a remand, it's because you don't even have to scold him and disrespect him. He made an error, and he's got to do this better. That's all. I don't really usually see them, that would be inappropriate, I think, for them to make it personal and scold him like he's a child. Now, unless he did something egregious, like, I don't know. I mean, it's possible. And when I say egregious, I mean it's going to be something politically incorrect, not just like a dumb arse decision, but I mean something like maybe sexist or racist or, violating someone's, showing like some bias against a religion or something like that. Yeah, I know what you meant, S. Lewis. ALJ. I know. It's like alt. I figured it out. Sav, you are. Okay, now I know who you are. Deb says, I'm your client, LOL. New one to boot. Yeah, good to see you. Deanna says, specialist, and I see them on a regular basis. That is the spouse's insurance. Yeah, I know. But even specialists, usually people don't see them that often, right? Like quarterly is like, maybe like when the problem first arises, they're going back and forth to the specialist because they got to get their mind around it and get a grip on what it is and all that. And then once they get into what's the treatment going to be, sometimes it's like every quarter they go back to the specialist. And it's for monitoring. Now, where are we at? Regrouping. Is this working? Should we do this? Every 3 months, the $50 might not be so painful. Of course, if you have 5 specialists, that would be a lot, like $250 every 3 months, right? Yeah. That's when you cut out Netflix. Just kidding. But yeah, seriously, I think we're about to cut it out. I watch it, but probably not as much as I could. I mean, one time a month, maybe. Virginia Gomez says, question number 3, 53 California. I love that you remind me of those basics. Virginia. Got a sentence for, wait, we saw that before. Oops. Did I go back up or something? All right. Okay, so this was, all right. Going back to what S. Lewis was saying about the ALJ, the district court judge remanded and the person had another hearing with the ALJ. That ALJ also denied it. Attorney appealed to the AC, so he had 2 appeals to the AC. AC scolded the ALJ a less harsh way than the district. Gotcha. And then so the first time the AC didn't remand and he had to go to federal district court. Is that correct? And they remanded it back. The judge had another hearing and the judge gave another denial. And this time the AC did not reverse. They just remanded it back to him again. He didn't have to do federal district court the second time. And they kind of said, you already told what you're supposed to do. Do it. I mean, he was told not by the AC the first time. He was told by the federal district court. And now they're saying, yeah, and you need to do that. That's cool. And that puts a little different spin on it, right, S. Lewis? I mean, the scolding might be, you didn't even listen the first time you were told, Mr. Judge, get your stuff together if you know how to be a judge. And then I think he's saying AC remanded it back to ALJ again. ALJ then approved it without a third hearing. So then he just went on the record, did an OTR. Sounds like the scolding was like, I've never had a case get denied when it's been remanded. I don't think. Meaning if the AC remanded it, I've never had the judge on bite number 2 deny it again. I know they happen though. That just hasn't happened to me. And I'm grateful because that's why I always say the judges are very gracious when I go back to them on remand. So Deb says, listen, Linda, and you got to do it like this. Linda. If you guys look it up, I'm sure you can YouTube look it up maybe. Linda. He's so cute, this little boy. And you could tell him he's just like, it's really funny. Rangal says, my sisters and I still throw Linda around all the time. You do too? So you know what I'm talking about. By the way, guys, it is 2:45. We've been here for an hour and 15. Giselle says, after a remanded case hearing is done, the judge sent Social Security letter stating additional evidence was obtained to propose to enter into the record for my new proposed exhibit. What is this information? Okay, so he should be sending you, if you don't have an attorney, and maybe even if you do, sends you a copy of the new, it's called a proffer. He's got new evidence that he got after the hearing. Now, you said you're going to another hearing after a remanded case hearing. Okay, so you already had the remanded hearing. So you've had hearing number 2, and then the judge might have gotten more evidence. It could have been he had a medical expert look at something. You look at that and they give you the opportunity. So they say, we're going to proffer this in. So it's already after our hearing. We can't, discuss it in a hearing unless we have a supplemental hearing. So they proffer the evidence. You have the right to, generally, it'll say it in that letter, Giselle. Let me know if it does not. Have another hearing if you want it based on that evidence, based on that new evidence, but you should see a copy of the evidence. A lot of times it's because he went and got interrogatories from some kind of expert, like a medical doctor asking to, does she meet a listing? And if not, what's the RFC? Sometimes they'll do that. It could be a vocational interrogatory, I suppose. I'm trying to think what else it might be. But in any event, you get a copy of the evidence. You have the right to, they say, cross-examine, have a second hearing, which you would really only maybe do if you had a reason, like what would a hearing solve? That the doctor probably won't be there, that doctor that wrote it. But you can also do written interrogatories to that doctor. So let's say you see his opinion is not favorable and you're like, did he look at blah, blah, blah? Like maybe you're like, oh my God, he says that I could stand for 6 hours at 8. I want to ask him how he came to that conclusion, notwithstanding the 3 years of 20 visits showing that I'm in a wheelchair. Like, Judge, can you explain how you can even come to that conclusion given the fact that medical evidence shows I've been in a wheelchair or something similar. That's an obvious one. But so you have if you read that letter, it's going to say what your rates are. Sometimes what you get is good. It'll say all the RFC stuff that you wanted it to say. That would mean if the judge embraces what he said and the judge is the one that ordered it, and so he generally does, it's going to give you what you want. So I don't need another hearing, Judge. It's all cool. Let it into the record. I do not object. So, but you got to read it. She goes on to say, does the evidence strengthen a disability claim? It depends what the evidence is. So you have to look at it, or another hearing is needed to object to it. You're not gonna be able to keep it out probably by objecting to it. You can't say, I don't like it because he's wrong. That comes down to, it'll be admissible, but it will be, the judge will decide if it's credible to him, what's the weight he should give it. If he thinks it's not credible too, and it's like weak, he will not give it any weight at all, potentially. So you're really so much not objecting to it unless there's something like it's unsigned, then you can object to it. Then let's go get a signature. But like you can do the technical things, or you don't object to it, but you could you could do a letter brief, get it together why you think it's bad, like shouldn't be given a lot of weight, how it's completely inconsistent with things in the record, like this, and this. That's what I would do. I would never, if it's not helpful to my client, I never let it go in without me saying a word. Never. If it is helpful to my client, I zip it. Civil Chick says, my primary care provider sent me to a neurologist after I asked about MRI results. Good. He said, I will refer you, but he isn't going to do anything. So he did. I went. He was right. However, lesions documented that. And now you've got an expert. Well, not that your PCP isn't an expert, but a specialist in that, regard. And and I'm curious, did you say to the neurologist, so what are the best ways of handling this? What is the current protocol? What is the current most successful in terms of, I understand there's no cure, but what is the best ways of controlling those symptoms? What do you suggest? And that's his job. But if you just go in there, keep your mouth shut and don't advocate for yourself and don't ask these questions, that's, like I said, think about if it was your child and you were taking them. Would you just go in and leave and then pay your pay that nasty $50 copay, and then he confirms that everything's there, which is a confirmation, but nothing else. I would be, so we had the appointment. So now's what, doc? You know, like what do you recommend? I mean, he should be giving recommendations, right? If you haven't seen his report, maybe you should go get his report too. Barbara says, thank you so much for your help. I am trying to get an appointment at the local Social Security office. Keep getting sent all over the county except the office I need to speak to or make an appointment. Goodness. Speaking of which, I just read something about, this is about in-persons, that they are working on making it so people don't need an appointment to walk in. I know some, there was a lot of leeway given to local offices who couldn't get their shit together. It dragged on and on and on. It was a COVID-related thing. You know how everything COVID, people like, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Let's keep these offices closed so we don't have to deal with the people in person. I do know the administration right now has publicly said that, and I didn't see the whole thing, but I don't know if there's a time frame or what, if there will be a mandate coming down, like you have to let people walk in. You just have to. Because the problem with the appointments is they don't have an online where you can just go online and make your appointment. That would be nice. No, you have to call and wait on hold for, in that particular office. If they have problems and they're doing no in-persons, they're going to have a lot of phone calls. So, you're trying to get through and oftentimes you can't get through. So, I mean, all of it's improving, but it's taken so long because it was in such, as you can imagine, very bad shape due to probably neglect for the last 20 years since I've been there. Yeah, keep pushing though, Barb. It'll work out in the end if you keep pushing. I feel that's probably very so. Giselle says there was a vocational expert at the hearing. A VE. Sometimes they'll do additional interrogatories to the VE, or it could be, it'll say in that letter. It should tell you. So Virginia says, you passed me, Linda. Hee hee. Joke. But no, you really passed. I did. It's the last one I wrote. Well, let me scroll up there, Ms. Virginia. Question number 3. This is the one that you asked about sentence for remand. This is one I'm seeing at 209. Commissioner and plaintiff agree for a new decision from federal district. What does that really mean? I don't know, because it doesn't seem like I guess I need to see the whole context. But really what we got to do is look up sentence 4 and that you gave the thing. I would just have to go look it up, but I don't really want to do that right now. So is that, I don't see any others. And this one, that, Virginia, where you say you passed me, Linda. Supposed to go, Linda, you passed me. That was at 219, and the prior one was 209. I didn't see anything in between, so I don't know what's going on with that. Civil Chick says, old and new lesions, brain damage areas, come back and see him when you get worse. Well, are you getting worse? Is this like a multiple sclerosis kind of thing, or kind of lesions? And get worse, are your symptoms worse? That's something that you can have, you have control over it then, as opposed to them saying, oh, no, I'll see you in 2 years, unless the symptoms get worse. Well, in 3 months, they got worse. I've been documenting this, and this. Just saying, depends if they are. All right, guys, I think we're, a little glitchy here. I thought we were done, but not, maybe. Mitch is in the house. Hi, Mitch. I don't think we've met. On the disability update report from 455 remarks, section online allows something like 30 words. 55, the online form, okay. I thought the online for these things gave more space than the print versions, I think, right? But you said, you're talking about words, not characters. Okay. 55, same as I was from the date on the form. Should one send a page via the post to explain condition? I don't really know what question you're talking about. You'd have to give me the entire question and answer the question. I don't know what your question is. Does it say explain your condition, or does it, what is it? What is the question? And then Barbara, I don't know what the question is. You'd have to clarify. Civil says, I can't get anyone to say actual MS. What about an MS specialist? Sometimes you can have your records, they're going to charge you, and I don't know. Telehealth visit would be good if insurance will cover it for an expert that might be far away, like particularly if we live in a rural area where there's not, it's 3 hours to the nearest town where there's doctors. Telehealth visits where they can review your records. So maybe you see them once a year, but you can have 3 or 4 other visits that are telehealth without going there. And that can be very valuable. And then they can get all of your medical, like the blood tests, the results of the MRIs or MRAs or whatever. And they can give their opinion that way without having, taken your blood pressure. They should be able to see your most recent PCP visit, send them that record that shows, here's my recent, and then he had me do blood tests too, and here's this. So why don't you ever notice so many times people be like, they have blood work done, same blood tests, every doctor gets their own order. It's like, how wasteful. No wonder why our insurance is so high. It should be like, no, he had blood work with so-and-so diagnostics 3 weeks ago, the only difference would be if it's supposed to be fasting and he didn't fast or something like that. So this is what Barbara did. That is really sweet. Thank you very much. You know where it goes to, right? Yeah, super. That's so nice. Thank you, Barbara. God bless you too. Giselle says, is it possible to get a copy of case evidence being entered through the attorney? If attorney said is good, but didn't let me know what the evidence is that good? Well, he's probably just not wanting to take the unpaid time to like accumulate it and get it to you. I don't know. Like some attorneys still do things old school with paper files and stuff like that. We don't have any paper files here, you know. First of all, everything's done electronically, and on the rare time something is sent by mail, it gets scanned in. And that's why it's so easy to get it to my clients. In fact, I was just talking to one. Well, we're going to be sending him a copy of a file, like a newer client who hasn't been able to see his file, but he's had an ongoing case, and we just come on board. Eventually, we can get in there and then download the whole thing. Always for posterity's sake, anyway. And then I'll definitely, yeah, for sure, share it. So I don't know why your attorney would not give that to you unless, you know, if he doesn't practice in the area a lot, maybe he's not connected to your e-file, but I find that hard to believe. I mean, I don't think you would be picking a lawyer that had never done it before or didn't do it regularly. Did you ask him for a copy of it? I mean, I don't know. I don't just automatically shoot everything over to the, you know, to my client's portal file in our system. Because I need them to focus on the forms we do send them, which can be arduous for them. So I don't want them distracting themselves. But when someone says, yeah, I'm dying to see or whatever, sometimes they want a copy of their CE exam. So when I can get my hands on that, I'll send it to them. You know, it's kind of like it's just like a blanket rule here. Whoever's in checking messages, if someone wants to copy their CE exam, you know, make a note and get it to them. Virginia says, okay, what happens after I remanded going back to SSA on a stipulation to voluntarily remand pursuant? It sounds like the SSA just agreed that the case should have another hearing. So they're saying, yeah, he missed a step. Notice that they're not saying we decide we're going to pay. Now, when the federal district court sends it back, usually the AC looks at it. And the AC, if they found something definitive that would make it even as with what the judge found, the person would win. If you found it, you know, validly, they can give a award and not a remand. That's kind of rare, but yeah. So the SSA can agree it should go back and not deal with, you know, delaying with the federal district court doing more or whatever. That's good. Again, it doesn't mean you win. You get another hearing, but Dimple says, just curious, did you get your early? I did. I thought I texted you. I was drinking it. And then I left for 3 days and got back last night. So those dishes are in the dishwasher right now. It's great. Thank you. Virginia says, thank you, Jess, for helping all of us. You're welcome. Giselle says, and it is so my pleasure, Virginia. You know that. I asked attorney for a copy, but attorney said is a good sign. I'm unsure how. I don't know how you should ask. That's your relationship with your attorney. I can't really. But I mean, why not just be honest and say, hey, I'd like to see a copy of it. Is this a problem? And then see what he says. I often share mine with my clients because I'll be like, is there something funky in here that didn't happen that he says happened? You know, like, she was able to count change and tie strings, and turns out he never had to do it. I never asked her if she could. So how could he come to that conclusion? So those are the things sometimes we'll take notes on. And if the case slides sideways, which means it doesn't, you know, gets denied, then sometimes we'll submit a complaint. Like, just so you know, this is what the claimant says did not happen at this, you know, because if, you know, that report is otherwise going to be in the file all the way to hearing and or beyond. And I want that judge to know that reporting was refuted to let him know that he maybe shouldn't take it very credibly because some of the things in there just didn't occur and they're completely fabricated. Giselle, yeah, that's Tasha, and she's been very mellow. She was mad. We were gone for a few days, and her babysitter, you know, doesn't do this, and she didn't probably get any junk food. Dimple says, I started to send some emojis and remember that you don't see them. I don't know. You mean on here? I see Giselle's heart. Looks like a couple bird heads. And then a bunch of yellow faces. Dimple, you are welcome. Misha's in the house. Hi, Misha. Have we met? How can I consult with you about the disability update report? Go to joydisability.com. Look in your upper right-hand corner, and there'll be a link for the prepaid consultations that you can, pick. I would suggest also you can email assistant@joydisability.com, and she will, if you have, want to know what would be an appropriate amount of time. It starts at 1 hour. So if you want to go shorter than that, it's probably not going to happen. And then whether you want to expedite it or not, most people don't need that. That costs a little bit extra. Yeah. So, and then she'll just schedule it and we'll be good. Okay. And we could Zoom. You get to pick Zoom or phone, whichever you want. If it's a disability update report, I suggest, she'll tell you, but like if you've already got a draft going on, that really eliminates a lot of time you have to have for the consult. So it's kind of cheaper. So if you do your own, you do your draft, and then I'll be like, it'll be you and me, and I'll be just telling you things I might change or not. And we'll have to talk about what's going on and what's, the impairments and all that. But sometimes it can be shorter than if I'm going to be typing it up for you, because I'm not that fast. And it goes by, it's time-based. It's only time-based. Okay, I think we're good, guys. 2:38, an hour 40 in. I don't see any other questions. Does anybody have any you'd like to squeeze in before we cut out? Misha says, thank you. I think 1 hour would be good. Can I send you a draft of remarks in advance? I don't know if I need to include the remarks. Yeah, I'm not going to read them in advance per se, more than like 5 minutes beforehand, because that would be eating. If I do, it's going to be eating into your hour. But you could, Liz will talk to you about, if you want to choose to do that. If you're like, yeah, I wanted to read through this, up to, but no more than 15 minutes or whatever, then that leaves 45 minutes on the phone. And then in that case, I'll be probably telling you what to fix instead of me fixing it for you. For me to do it, it's probably more like a 2 hour. And then, yeah, she can put you in the portal and you can upload it there so it's secure. That's probably the best way. So you're not emailing it from your Gmail account or whatever you got going on. But yeah, you can get that in early. And even if I'm just going to look at it at the time of the consult, it'll be there and I can have it up my screen. So there's another reason to send it. It's just whether you want to use any of your time of the hour for me to pre-look at it. It's not a bad idea if it's something that, if someone says, I have my medical file, can you look at it before we talk? I'm like, that'll take me about 6 hours. Would you like to pay? It's not going to work. I'm like, that is not going to be an affordable consult for you. So that's not really, like if they have 2 or 3 reports that I think are really pivotal on what's going on with them. Yeah, okay, I'll take 10 minutes and then we'll hook up. But I'm like, if it's going to be more than that, you don't really want to do that. It's going to be cost prohibitive unless you're loaded. Those hours they go by fast when you're trying to absorb and take notes on medical records. So, and then I don't really have a, different rankings. Like, well, I'm going to do a shitty job here for less time. Like, it's got to just meet the standard or I'm not doing it all, So, Misha, you're welcome. All right. As I said, Misha, you have to go to joydisability.com, look in your upper right-hand corner for the consult button, and that's how you start the process. After you've done that, you can email assistant@joydisability.com. You're not going to have a phone call to schedule it. It's going to be done through communications, okay? In writing. Barbara says, have a good day, Steph. I'll keep you posted on my progress. Maybe it'll help others waiting survivor. But yeah, that would be good. Definitely keep us posted. All right, guys, I think we're done and good. Everyone's questions are answered. We'll be here next Wednesday, not Thursday. Today was just a makeup because I couldn't be here yesterday. And I should be good to go for sure for the next couple of months. And then in August, we're going on a family trip with the kids just to Jersey. But I'm trying to think, yeah, I might actually I might just do it live from down there. I don't think I did last year because I was coming back on the Wednesday. This time we're going to go for the whole week. So that'll be fun. I like to do them in a new place. I'll try to get a cool background. LaRocho says, Stephanie, God bless you and your family for your time of very informative information and so entertaining. Oh, thank you, LaRocha. And Rangel says, yes, huge thanks. You're welcome. All right. You guys are very kind. 12 o'clock p.m. Please watch them. And share, comment, ask questions if you have any videos that you would like to see, or if you have a question about details, definitely let me know. I get through all the comments eventually, so I'll definitely respond. All right. And again, next Wednesday, live stream 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and our 12 p.m. daily would be super helpful to help the channel. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.